our next speaker is Mr. Gift Bopape, who is a qualified clinical pharmacist, currently practicing as a pharmacist, working at a private hospital pharmacy in Pretoria. He holds a BPharm degree from the Tshwane University of Technology and an MPharm degree from the Sefako Mahato Health Science University. He has worked both in the public and private healthcare sector, harnessing a myriad of clinical, retail, and academic pharmaceutical skills, which he hopes to utilize to implement a positive change in the healthcare sector, especially for disadvantaged communities. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome my former colleague, Mr. Gift Bopape.
Thank you very much. As introduced, my name is Gift Bopape. I'm a qualified clinical pharmacist, currently practicing as a pharmacist, which is also one of the challenges that I'll mention in the coming presentations, which is the barriers to entry into the field of practicing as a clinical pharmacist in this current state and age. So I think we can move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of my education, I started studying at I did my matric in South Africa. We call it matric. I see in Zim when I was hearing the other presenters, they have A levels, they have Cambridge, and they have So I did my matric at Hoërskool Pretoria West, and then in 2016, and then in 2017, I had to upgrade my matric because I didn't really do well in one subject, which was mathematics. I wasn't really that good with numbers, and it posed as a barrier to me it wasn't a setback, but it was just a bit of a delay for me to perfect myself to become what I am today. Then in 2018, funny enough, I applied at Tshwane University of Technology to study BPharm. So TUT, the main campus, is just I just walk out of the gate of my high school, and then the next road is the university. So it just goes to show, how lucky I was with the progression. I didn't have to catch 5 taxis to get to a university. I just had to walk outside of my school after school and just go apply there manually. So in 2018, that's when I did my first year BPharm at the Tshwane University of Technology. After that, I think I felt like, I didn't really get the gist of what I studied in my undergrad. That's when I think in my final year I decided to, let me just go and further my education and do an MPharm. And I had a very keen interest in the field of clinical pharmacy, which is one of the specialization fields with regards to, with pharmacy. And there'll be some of them which I am going to mention in the coming slides. And then in terms of the subjects you would actually need to study, just the basic BPharm degree, you'd need pure mathematics. You also need to have physical sciences. You also need to be doing life sciences in your current matric and have English as one of your language. I think it can either be your first additional language, or it can be your home language. I was doing it as a home language, and you need to have an average of at least minimum of 60%. And this is just the minimum. I mean, there's currently now in the state, besides the barriers of entry into the workplace, there's now barriers of entry into university because of the high level of people who are actually passing, and it's becoming a bit of a difficulty for people to get access to university to be studying any basic degree, even if it's not a BPharm. Next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of understanding the career and industry, what I typically do in my current role, practicing as a pharmacist, is I have to ensure the accurate dispensing of medication. Not only to the general public, but also to the inpatients that we have, because we deal with both the general public and also our in-hospital clients that we so it's quite funny that when you go into public, it's patients, but when you go into the private sector, they don't generally refer to them as patients, but they refer to them as clients. Because that's where the money is, So I would also, be involved in ward rounds and with the multidisciplinary team. whereby we have to advise mainly on, finishing medication related advice to healthcare professionals, and also interpret, the lab results. So with pharmacy, with the field of clinical pharmacy, not just with the clinical pharmacy, but pharmacy in general, we play a very critical role in enhancing individualized patient care. So there's multiple factors that can actually impact your treatment, and that also relates to, how your body reacts and how your body advances in the stage of illness. And drugs can also have an impact in your health, and also you becoming better. So we advise in relation to that, because we are the experts in medication, and we are able to guide you and guide also the healthcare professionals in providing the best medication suitable to and individualized to you as a patient, to make sure that you become better and walk out of the hospital feeling better. And we also ensure the adequate supply of pharmaceuticals. So we ensure that there's enough levels of medication availability, so that we don't have medication shortages in hospitals. So regarding some of the misconceptions people have about pharmacists, is that we are just glorified shop stewards. So what we just do is stand behind the counter and just sell medication as if we are selling sweets. It seems like that from a distance, but there's a lot that goes on before we even issue out the medication for you. So it goes firstly with analyzing, making sure that the script that you receive from the doctor is actually really from the doctor, and it's not just, from your uncle there in the big room, who just decided that, no, today my son, my nephew is feeling sick, so I'm just gonna write some med lemon for them so they can go and get it at the pharmacy. Also from there on, it goes into actually making sure that the medication you're getting doesn't really harm you in any instance, or doesn't even interact with any other medication that you're taking at this current point in time. Then you also have to ensure that the dosing that you're given is not going to harm you or kill you at some point. And then the other opinion is that our opinion on medication is inferior to that of the doctor. So whatever the doctor says, it goes, especially when it comes to medication. So when the doctor said, no, you're going to take 850 milligrams of metformin 5 times daily, you're gonna take it 5 times daily because your doctor told you to take it five. And when we tell you that no, it's not really supposed to be that case, then it becomes a challenge, especially with patients who trust their doctors more than they trust other healthcare professionals. Then the other issue is that there is no need to specialize as a pharmacist. This doesn't necessarily come from the general public, but it comes within the profession itself, whereby a lot of qualified pharmacists don't believe that there's a need to, specialize and become more, to harness your unique skill in the field of pharmacy, and which I feel like this is false, because as much as pharmacy is broad and you can do everything else, with just the basic degree of being a pharmacist, I feel like specializing and individualizing and targeting your and harnessing your skill is one of the most important things, so that you can actually become a consultant in that particular field, and be more advanced in terms of knowledge in specialization. Next slide, please. So in terms of the skills that you would require, and what is essential in this field. I think this also relates back to the previous speaker, in terms of being analytical, being analytical, and being able to analyze things, and not looking at things on a surface level, but be able to break them down into smaller details, so that you can be able to analyze and solve a problem within a small space of time. Secondly, you need to be a quick thinker, because most of the decisions have to be made on the spot, especially when you're doing what rounds with doctors. There's no time for you to be able to say, no, I'm going to check my references with a critically ill patient who actually needs a decision to be taken on the spot. You need to be very compassionate. You need to be, very especially because you're dealing with patients, you're dealing with people. You're dealing with people at a very, very vulnerable stage, and also dealing with families as well. So you need to be able to comfort them and ensure them, and let them know that everything will be okay. You need to be people and patient oriented, which relates to the previous skill. You need to be a lifelong learner. I think this also not only applies to the field of pharmacy, but especially with the other speakers who've been saying that you need to be able to, adapt to the ever-changing world of the profession. You need to be able to adapt quickly, and you need to be steady and firm, especially when you're making decisions. A lot of your decisions can be overridden if you're not sure and you don't seem convincing enough to be able to stand by the decision that you made. And the last skill is that you need to be a very good decision maker, especially one that you're going to be able to make decisions on the spot and be able to make sure that those decisions do not harm the patient, or you do not provide false evidence to your fellow healthcare professionals. Next slide, please. So in terms of the challenges and realities that I've faced in my current career, I would say, especially to the field, especially currently now, the levels of employment are very low. I know some of my colleagues who have even finished the degree before me are still struggling to practice as just a pharmacist, not even speaking about a clinical pharmacist, but to practice as a pharmacist due to the low levels of employment. It doesn't necessarily matter your nationality, whether you're from a foreign country, whether you're South African or not. Entering into a space of employment is quite difficult. Now, when you advance, you even become a clinical pharmacist. That becomes even worse, because I think I've been to like around 8 interviews in the past 4 months before I actually even got my current role, and that becomes a bit of a challenge. The entrance barrier is, I think, is one of the most challenging things. But that's not to discourage you to say don't go and study, a BPharm degree. I think most of any other degree in terms of gaining entry, it's becoming a bit more difficult now. So that's why we need to be versatile. We need to be able to differentiate ourselves from our peers and be able to stand out, so that we are able to be employable. Not even employable, but to also become entrepreneurs as well, because I think that's the next solution in terms of employment. Because if you can't get employed, then why not make those opportunities yourself? Then there comes the issue of the disparities in terms of the wage, the salaries that you get, whereby in the private sector you don't get as much as an employed person in government. That's also one of the challenges, and that's why it becomes a bit difficult to practice it at your full potential when you are financially you have financial inequalities as well. Then the other issue will be the adequate level of experience, which will relate back into the first challenge, which is the entrance barrier. Because for you to be employed, you need to have a certain level of experience, especially if you want to specialize. And if you can't get the experience, then it becomes an issue. You won't be able to be an employable individual in that instance. So how do I handle work-related stress or pressure? I think the best thing to do is learning from those who are ahead of you. If they guide you, and because if you want to do things on your own, you're going to work very hard and it's not going to be very efficient. So if you have people who are experienced and they can show you the loopholes and show you how to do things and you can learn from them, it becomes much easier, and in that instance you work much smarter. Secondly, is you need to be humble. You need to be very humble to learn from those who are ahead of you, so that things become a bit much more easy, and it becomes less, because most of the time if you feel pressurized, it's because you are not necessarily you're not doing, not that you're not doing enough, but you're not seeking enough assistance from other people. And you not seeking assistance might be because of maybe a bad interpersonal relationship you have with someone, and you're afraid to even speak to that person to ask for help. The thirdly is just planning ahead. Planning ahead helps you to relieve a lot of stress, because you do a lot of things in advance, and when the time comes for you to implement those things, you've planned prior, and you know that you've actually done all of those things that you're supposed to do initially. What is the one thing that I wish I knew before entering this field? I think it also, I've heard a lot of speakers previously say this, is that networking is especially, I think it was Joseph who said they got their one of the jobs they got was when they were actually doing a job for someone, and then they were referred. So networking and showcasing your work is gonna take you places. It's good, yeah. Like if you just don't keep into your own circle. Go out, speak to people, experience different personalities, network with different people. So don't be afraid to speak to other people to gain the necessary and relevant knowledge to be where you want to be. Next slide, please. So are there any in-demand specializations or trends in imaging? So there's quite a lot. Like pharmacy is quite broad. Like I said, there's a lot of specialty fields that you can go into with just also your basic BPharm degree. You don't necessarily have to go and do a master's. But in terms of clinical pharmacy, that's where I think having to do a master's is quite important, because you're doing pharmacy at an advanced level, and you need the necessary level and experience to practice as a clinical pharmacist. So for me, I think the first one will be clinical pharmacy, specializing as a clinical pharmacist. Then there's a regulatory affairs pharmacist who would most of the time work in your manufacturing industries, ensuring compliance and ensuring that there's quality in the medication that's produced. In that instance, and there's what we call a quality assurance pharmacist, who most of the time work in corporate, maybe at your medical aid schemes. Also, you find them in your manufacturing sectors. I think that's one of the emerging specializations. Then there's a public health pharmacist. I think Simpiwe will speak more on that, in terms of what does it necessarily mean to become a public health pharmacy specialist. Then there's an academic pharmacist who I think plays a critical role in developing all the other, for specialization specialty pharmacists that I mentioned, because you have to start somewhere to become a pharmacist, and you need to be taught by an academic pharmacist. Then if someone is interested in this career, where can they get started? Are there any other courses, internships, or entry-level jobs? Well, if you want to become like a pharmacist, I think completing a 4-year degree course will get you into that field. But if you perhaps don't necessarily want to become a pharmacist, but want to be involved in the field of pharmacy, there's other avenues that you can explore, such as being a post-basic pharmacist assistant. You can also work in a manufacturing pharmacy, compounding pharmacy, retail pharmacy, also, a hospital institution-based pharmacy as well. So that's another, and you don't have to do a degree for that. You can just complete a 2-year course to become a post-basic pharmacist assistant, or you can also become a pharmacy technician, which you also don't necessarily need a degree for that. You just do a short course, and then you can also gain entry into the field of pharmacy. Next slide, please. So, any advice for the students who are from a disadvantaged background? I'd say just take a leap of faith. Coming from a disadvantaged background doesn't mean that you have to personally stay in that background. I think that should be one of the motivating factors for you to just take the leap of faith and just to change the background that you came from. Start looking for funding opportunities as soon as you can to prepare, and so that you meet. You don't wait until you're admitted to get funding, because it can be a bit difficult while you're in university or doing a certain course, and you're still looking and screaming for funding, and that might derail you from your academics. And you're good enough to pursue any career field, whether you want to become a mining engineer, a pharmacist, an accountant, an industrial psychologist. Those people also came from the background that they also didn't really even know that those fields existed until a certain point when someone introduced them to them, and they ventured into those fields and became what they are today. The last piece of advice I'd give is, I think everyone has been uttering this, even the previous speaker uttered that you need to have a mentor. Mentors have been there, they've done that, and they have the experience of how to do things, and they are able to guide you and hold your hand and take you places that you didn't even know they existed. So relying on your own general knowledge and trying to do trial and error on your own is going to become a challenge for you. So getting a mentor, I think, is one of the best things you can do for yourself, so that you can enter into spaces you never thought you could enter before. Yeah, I think that kind of concludes my presentation. Apologies for the technical difficulties. Yeah, thank you very much for your time as well.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bopape. Thank you so much for that informative and insightful presentation. We actually even have a question from the chat box. Exciting, yay. We have a question from the chat box, so we're gonna go straight into our Q&A session. And the question is, how is AI changing the field of pharmacy?
I think I'm the only one who got like questions from the, the comment section. Okay, so how is AI changing the practice of? Well, I won't lie. I haven't really delved into the impact that AI will has personally into the field of pharmacy, but I think if we are to use AI to our advantage, I think it will be into the space of education. Um, AI, I think most of the people are using it for convenience at this point in time. There's a lot of health related information that's generated through AI. If you're looking at your the medication that's used to lose weight now, the GLP-1, your semaglutide, and they know it as Ozempic. If you look at how the marketing of that particular thing is done, is most of it is through AI, and it's much easier for people to get access to such information. It's generated through AI, because it's much easier to create and easier to put out to the market, so that people are educated, not necessarily educated, but sometimes falsely educated about a particular medication, so that sales go up. So that's kind of like one that a disadvantaging factor. But if you look at it on the bright side, it can be utilized to educate the public in terms of the field of pharmacy. But in terms of pharmacy practice, I don't necessarily have a lot of knowledge on that particular topic.
Thank you, Mr. Papa. We have another question from the chat box from Ms. Jessie. She says, do you think that AI might somehow affect pharmacy jobs, maybe in the distant future or not so distant future?
Yeah, so I've seen an article. I think it was on Mediclinic, which spoke about the replacement of hospital staff with AI. Um, I don't necessarily think currently. I don't think necessarily currently there's going to, because with pharmacy we need human capital in that instance. But in terms of the like I said, the field of pharmacy is ever evolving. We won't necessarily need um a pharmacist to dispense medication to a patient. There's now self-help services whereby a patient can walk into a pharmacy, speak to a screen, and let the screen know what they came, just present the script, let them know what they came to pick up, and there'll then be an automated dispensation of medication. But what is going to lack is the patient interaction and with the healthcare professional. I think that's one aspect that cannot be replaced. The human touch that's required. But seeing how, funny enough, I think my girlfriend was also showing me the other day how when she sometimes feels low, in terms of low self-esteem, she speaks to AI, and AI is able to respond to her and tell her, no, you're feeling this way because of this particular 1 2 3. And I'm like, now I'm being replaced as a boyfriend by an AI, by AI. And it came to show me that with AI, it's firstly developing into a fully functional human being who can also be able to answer the because it learns every day from all the frequently asked questions on the internet, and it develops in that aspect. So if a patient asks a question of how can I take my metformin every day, and there's an answer generated on it, so there's potentially there's potential for us as pharmacists to be replaced by AI, but I think putting a personal human touch can never really be replaced by AI. So yeah, if we don't adapt quickly, I think potentially yes, we can be replaced by AI development in our career field.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bopape, for so much insight to it. And I think from this whole AI conversation that we're having right now, I get to see that as much as AI is the new thing, it can't really replace the human touch to everything. Like I saw somewhere where somebody had written that AI cannot replace human beings, but then a human being using AI can replace you. So it's more of using it for our advantage, instead of allowing it to actually replace us in our different fields. We also have another comment. It says, which says, in addition, I don't think AI can determine the correct dose. Yeah, especially one that is patient specific. It cannot.
Yeah, it cannot read a prescription from the word with a high dose of but funny enough, because sorry to take your time, with the practice of clinical pharmacy in the private health sector, they most of the prescriptions can be put through a system called the ICNet system. So it's able to give you what we call alerts, right? With the alerts, it tells you
Mm.
there's a potential high dosage for this particular patient based on the patient's weight, and it can also tell you that because we note the patient's allergies, electronic, everything is done electronically. So the system is able to pick up any form of interaction or any form, and then it alerts you as a clinical pharmacist to go to the particular ward to go and find out if that particular alert is true. And if that is being, so you're actually being guided by an automated system to tell you what you can go do and review as a personal as a pharmacist. So there's potential that yes, in the next coming future, it's going to be able to do the right dose, and also the right route of administration and so forth and so forth. So we need to be well advanced in that field. So sorry for taking the time. Thank you very much for that.
No worries. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the conversation and the discussion. There's a comment who says, I think I should start a new degree after being here for these presentations. um, yeah, maybe or maybe not. Thank you so much, Mr. Bopape. We're gonna go to our next speaker right now.